Hi, this is Lou Ann Worley. I'm with Rock and Book Reviews, and I'm so happy to be here today with Mike Alger. Mike Alger is a meteorologist, a family man. He's involved in many boards and communities, and he is an author, and now he's a narrator, and we're excited to have him and learn more about him. Mike, tell us a little bit about your life growing up, namely how many siblings you had, where you grew up at, and a few key events in your life that is memorable to you.
Oh, sure. Well, I was born at a very early age in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and but moved to the Pacific Northwest. Grew up in Tacoma, Washington. I was there from I think the time I was three or so years old, 2 or 3 years old, until I finished college. I have two brothers and two sisters. I'm the classic middle child. I'm not sure psychologically what that means, but somehow I survived that. And let's see, growing up, I went to college in Walla Walla, Washington. They call that the Valley so beautiful they named it twice. And when I went to school, I originally thought that I would probably become a doctor like my father. My father was a surgeon, and decided when I got into school that maybe that wasn't what I really wanted to do, and ended up getting degrees in geology and chemistry. Always been a science nerd. I always enjoy that, but I love theater and that sort of thing as well. I was very involved in athletics and kind of tried to do everything I could just to sort of maximize the life experience, I think. I was a petroleum geologist for 7 years after graduating from college, and then decided I was going to switch careers. I was an exploration manager, a little independent oil and gas company, living in Portland, Oregon area. And I met my wife in college, and we've now been married for over 40 years, believe it or not. And we just decided, I decided I wanted to try something different. I was doing some consulting because our company had gotten sold to our chief competitor at the time. I just felt a little restless. So while I was doing some consulting, I ended up getting on a game show, believe it or not, a little locally produced game show in Portland that nobody's ever heard of. It was called On the Spot, and did well enough in it that I came back for a few times. And it kind of gave me a chance to sort of see what was going on in the world of television, how television worked, and some of the behind the scenes look. And I was kind of fascinated by that. And so I talked my way into an internship at the local CBS station in Portland, and wanted to kind of learn all facets of it. I thought with my background, meteorology would be the field that I'd eventually land in, and it was. The geology and chemistry are very good related sciences in the field of meteorology. Ended up getting a job at a little tiny station in the Tri-Cities, Washington area, southeastern Washington, and moved to Reno, Nevada here 34 years ago. And I've been here ever since, chief meteorologist at KTVN TV. And it's been a wonderful combination for me because I love science. I'm a science nerd, science geek, but I also love teaching, and I love, I guess, for lack of a better word, performing. And so I'm kind of a very strange right brain, left brain kind of guy, I guess.
And I think that's great. I think it's balanced.
Yeah, well, yeah. The people who know me, not many of them call me balanced necessarily, but I'll take that as a compliment.
I have a daughter like that, so I can relate to what you're saying. But so you were very successful in your college. Then you were a meteorologist there at the station for 30 years and received a prestigious award. What was that award? Tell us about
Well, I've received a few. I have an Emmy on the mantle over there, but I also received a Associated Press Award, Best Weathercast Award, and a few, they call them RTNDAs, Radio and Television News Director Association Awards for best weathercasts. And the awards are nice. I appreciated them very much, and just figured after a while I would let someone else win them. I guess I've got mine, and there's no reason to jump into that fray too much more.
Well, it's something to be proud of. It's something
I appreciate that. you.
Okay. You wrote a mystery book years ago. Tell us a little bit about it. You've recently narrated it again. So tell us a little bit about the book.
I did. It was about, oh gosh, it was right around just before 2000, I think, is when I got the idea for it. I was doing on the side some radio hits for one of the local radio stations in town. And I'd been doing that for a couple of years, and it seemed to be going quite well. And one day I just received a letter out of the blue saying that, I guess in a nice way or somewhat of a cold way, that they no longer needed my services. And it was very strange, and that not the fact that they no longer needed my services, but sort of the way they did it. There was just seemed something mysterious about it. They didn't want anyone down there talking to me. And in my business, you should never be surprised about how you get fired from a job. But I was sitting on the couch with my wife. We're giving each other foot rubs on the couch. Kind of popped into my mind, there must be drugs involved somehow. It's just sort of wild idea that sort of came to mind. And it just kind of planted the seed for an idea. And I said, that might make a really fun book sometime. Well, I thought about it for 5 years. I never did anything. And I came home late one night. The kids were in bed, and I had young kids at the time. And when I work a swing shift, so I'd get home around midnight. Everybody else is asleep. I sat down and I pounded out the first chapter of the book, and kind of sent it off to friends and family. And they all encouraged me to keep going and writing it. So I finally decided just to finish the darn thing and wrote it. It's called Snowstorm. A very good friend of mine who's a wildly successful author, Dale Brown. He's I don't know how many New York Times bestsellers he has. But I met him in the process, and he was very encouraging for me. And he calls it a fantasy autobiography, which is probably a pretty good way to look at it. So it came out, finally got it published. That was a whole nother story that would probably take up your whole blog time to talk about. But in the process of that, this was again back a little over 20 years ago. Talking books at that time, you recorded CDs, and I decided, well, why don't I make a talking book out of this while I'm at it? And so I recorded it, knew nothing really about the production process of how to do that properly. But I recorded it and burned it on CDs, and then just never did anything with it. Well, cut to 20 years later or 15 years later, and have become a pretty big audiobook fan myself. So I'm listening to audiobooks, and I did a lot with Audible. I had an account with Audible. And I somehow stumbled onto their what's called Audible Creation Exchange, or Audiobook ACX, Audiobook Creation Exchange. In one of the places it said, do you have an audiobook you want to market? I said, well, yeah, if I dig up that old hard drive, I could probably do that. Why not? It didn't cost anything. It was just if they ever sold any. And then it also said, are you a narrator? And I said, well, gosh, I wonder if that's something that I could do, because they had 1,000 titles or whatever that needed narrators. And I thought, well, that's, with my background at least, that ought to be something that I should be able to figure out how to do. And, eventually I put in an audition for a couple of books there, and got one, and sort of learned the process. And in the process, I realized how bad the one that I had done with Snowstorm was, because there are lots of little tricks of the trade and other things that, there's a learning curve to becoming a good narrator and producer of audiobooks. So I just started doing that. I ended up getting together with some great authors who liked the work that I did. And Lauren Carr is one of them, of course. And I don't know how many of hers I've done, but probably close to 20 of hers, I think.
So is the other book really kind of a biography of your life?
Well, a fantasy autobiography. There's a lot of my life in it. It was written here in Reno, and the main guy was a meteorologist and TV meteorologist and all that. So, I stole a lot from my own life and wrote locally here about, it's a great place actually to write. It's a great setting for writing. And like I say, I realized how bad that was. So I finally re-recorded that one after having done 25 or 30 other projects, and I'm much happier with the results of that one.
What was so bad about it?
You know, they're just production wise, it wasn't very good. There are a lot of lip pops and breaths, and I didn't really understand the whole process of making a clean recording, having a room track in the background, and there are just a lot of little tricks of the trade that I didn't realize at the time. I just kind of recorded it and put it down, and that was that. Plus, I think I've become a better narrator. That's also something. I mean, I've been a communicator all my life, and I've been a broadcaster all my life, but there are other things about voice acting that I think I've gotten better at since I did that. And so I'm very happy with the remake of Snowstorm, and it's on Audible too. Just do a search for my name or Snowstorm, and you'll probably find it.
Great. And you're writing another book, correct?
Yeah, that's a long process. Yeah, I've got a sequel that I have started, and once I did that, I started writing for the newspaper, a daily column for them, and it just took up all my writing time. So I haven't made a lot of progress on the sequel. I'm hoping to. I'm getting close to retirement now, so I'm hoping to pick up that project and maybe complete it here in another couple of years.
That's great. Well, you are the first meteor. You're that too. You're the first narrator I've had on. I wanted one that I really liked and I really wanted to promote, and you were it. And when Lauren told me a little bit more about you, it convinced me even more, so it got me in contact with you.
Oh, great. No, I'm glad she did.
To me, narrators are more talented than most actors.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to maintain these different voices of these different characters and keep that in the back of your mind the whole time, so you can flick back and forth on them. And you do that marvelously. And
thank you.
What steps do you take to become a narrator?
There are different narrating styles, and there are some narrators who really try to completely vary everything from one character to another, and there are others who take an attitude of less is more, and I probably fall a little closer to that one, because I mean, especially as a male having to do female characters periodically, you don't want to try to sound like a woman. It just ain't going to work. It'll sound silly. And sometimes when you have so many characters, you can try to come up with a absolutely totally unique voice for one or the other, but eventually you run out of voices that sound real, and voices that sound, like they're not totally just weird. And instead, a lot of times you can distinguish characters by their pacing, by certainly their tone, a little lower, a little higher. Some may speak in a kind of breathy voice. Some may speak very somewhat unemotionally. Some speak very ebulliently. And so there are a lot of little things that I do. And what I actually do is, when I have a new character, I kind of decide who they are, and then I'll take my iPhone and I'll just record a little sentence and name that character and put it in my little voice recording app on the iPhone. So if this character shows up again a little later, I can listen to it. Okay, that's who that person was. And it can be a real challenge, especially with Lauren's books, who have 1,000 characters in every single one.
Multiple characters.
Yeah. It can be weird. Usually I'll pick a character that's just me, and then I'll pick a character that's me, with a little Barry White thrown in or something. I mean, it's just some little difference in things. And this person will, like I say, the pacing can be a very distinguishing trait that you may not realize until you listen to it. So there are lots of ways of doing it. Of course, a very well-known audiobook narrator, voice actor, Scott Brick, who I don't try to emulate him because he's excellent. And he does a lot of Clive Cussler genre and all that. He's fantastic. And he seems to take a less is more kind of attitude in that, if it's a minor character, doesn't have to make something really strange out of them. And some of the voices may sound the same, but I never have any trouble distinguishing who's talking with him. And his women characters, well, if you just listen to it, well, it doesn't sound like a woman, but it's a woman. And his accents are phenomenal when he uses one. And so I'm trying to learn from people like that. How far out on the edge do you want to go? Now, I did a books for C.L. Bevel, who writes the Bubba Mystery series. And those are they're hilarious redneck deep South books. You can't go overboard. The gunnels on that boat are so high, you're never going to go overboard with it. And so, those are fun and I can do a really ridiculous sounding redneck Southern voice. And, Bubba's just one of them great guys that you really love to hear, sort of a thing. And those are just fun to do. And like I say, very few people think you're going overboard because it's written in an overboard fashion.
One thing I used to get very irritated in when, like you said, when a man tried to sound like a woman with a real high pitch.
Yeah.
It ruined the whole story.
And you shouldn't try. You shouldn't try as an narrator, but you should make it distinctive enough that soften it or air it out or do something so that you get the feel of femininity without it sounding necessarily like a woman's voice.
You've shared a little bit with some ideas, but how does one apply to become a narrator?
Well, the way I did it was through the audiobook exchange. acx.com is the website that I did. There's a link there where you go and it lists, and you can filter them by genre and all this other stuff. And it shows everybody who's looking for a narrator. And what you do is they will have a little audition script for you, and you record it. You write them a note and you record their script, and they get to listen to the various submissions and pick the one that they like the most. That's how I did it with Lauren. That's how I got in touch with Lauren. She was in the process of and of course I can't even count how many books she's written altogether, but she had a couple other narrators that she was working with, and she was trying to do all these different series. And she started me doing her Joshua Gates series. And gosh, that's been several years ago now. And eventually I've just ended up doing all of hers. So, but that's how you do it. You go through that process and you can submit it online. They will listen to all the people that submit it, and we'll pick the one they want. Then you negotiate with them either a fee per hour, or if you do a royalty split with them.
Okay, yeah, like reviewers, there's not near enough reviewers for the amount of authors out there.
Sure.
And the same way with narrators. Books. I think narrating books is coming in the future.
It seems almost all the books that I read are on tape, and when I'm in the car, it just comes on automatically. And but man, that's the way I am. I'm a very audible kind of person anyway. Such a great way to whether it's fiction or nonfiction, any genre, there's an awful lot out there that is great. And you have all this time you're spending, like I say, in the car for me, or doing chores, or riding a bicycle or whatever. My wife rides a bicycle a lot, and she's got her earphones in and listening to an audiobook doing that.
They have done several polls now, and the majority right now of all the polls are listening to audio more than even the ebooks. So
yeah.
Hugh, I used to be one that thought I had to have a paper book in my hand, and I still do not like ebooks. But years ago, I listened to a CD with audio, and I hated it. The guy just ruined it. And he had the feminine voice and all that stuff. And it just, I thought, no, I can't stand listening to this. So I decided I didn't like audio books. And then a few years ago, with the California fires and the smoke coming in, and
Sure.
And my eye allergies got so bad that even my eye doctor thought it was an eye infection and it was just allergies, but I couldn't read. And I have chronic migraines. I can't stand to just lay there and not do anything.
Sure.
And I signed on to Audible and tried it. And sure enough, I decided, hey, this is a lot different than what it was when there was CDs.
Yeah,
And
it's so much easier. And you're right. I mean, a narrator can enhance or totally ruin a good piece of work.
exactly.
And everyone's going to be different too. I mean, I'll have projects that 90% of the people will write reviews and say all these wonderful things about me that I actually start to believe. And then I'll get the one who says it's the narration. I just can't listen to this guy. And being in the media anyway, I've kind of gotten used to having to deal with bad press every now and again, and it's always those are the ones that you remember, obviously. But it's a taste thing, and I understand that not everybody is everybody's cup of tea.
But that's what makes the world interesting, is all the different
It
opinions
does.
and ideas. And so, but yeah, it's strange. Most of us do center on the negative, even though that psychologist said one negative comment takes 14 positive to erase.
Sure. Yeah, it
Oh.
does. It takes me a little less than that, I think, just because I've learned how to deal with it through, especially in the early days of broadcasting when you're not very good anyway, and but it's something you eventually you realize just is a fact of life, and you're never going to make everybody happy.
You have to ad lib what you do on. Like,
yeah, I don't have what's kind of fun about narrating audiobooks is I never get to read a script on TV because as a meteorologist, I'm just ad-libbing my forecast. And there's several reasons for that, but one just has to do with the mechanics of being able to stand in front of a green screen. You have to flip the teleprompter to the on-air picture. So yeah, I've always just ad-libbed everything, and very rarely do I ever get to read something on the teleprompter. So this has been fun to kind of recreate this. I did a lot of reporting early in my career, and so I did have to narrate voice tracks and things like that. And this is even more fun because I really can create different voices and experiment with accents, and it's been real fun to do.
What type of preparation do you make before you start narrating a book?
I like to look at the character list. Lauren does a great job of putting a whole character list of it, and I'm usually a little overwhelmed by the time I get through the 4 pages of the characters. I identify, okay, who's me, who's my voice, who are the really key characters, and how do I want them verbally to interact with the others. I've got to have enough distinction over the main character that I make sure that if I'm reading that person, I better at least be able to distinguish between them, and hopefully if I do, the listeners do, and they'll know it's them talking even if I don't say the Louise said sort of a thing on the end. Lauren has written a series including who she calls the Geezer Squad. It's a Chris Matheson cold case murder series, and I love doing the Geezer Squad because they're each such great characters individually, and I have very distinctive voices for each of them, and it's fun because they do a lot of just rapid fire dialogue, and I got to be switching back and forth all the time between the voices, and it's fun to kind of create that world. Okay, you know who's talking just by listening to it, hopefully. So those are the things that I mostly do. I will always try to read ahead and know what's coming up and all that. Depending on the schedule, I can't always do that, but it's always nice to be able to do that. It's kind of like, I think most writers know how their book is going to end when they start it. So it's good to kind of have that in your back pocket. I try not to get too involved in that because the narrator, in much the same way as the reader, it can sometimes be good not to know too much, because as you're discovering at the same time the listener is reading it, sometimes it's good maybe to not know what's going to happen a little bit later on. And this is, I take a little different attitude than a lot of narrators. A lot of narrators, they super prepare for it. And I'm not slamming that method at all. But in many ways, I kind of like the process of discovery as I'm doing it. Now, sometimes that causes me to have to go back and redo something because, okay, that really didn't work knowing what's coming up. But oftentimes, I think it puts me in a similar frame of mind to the reader. Sometimes I will just kind of read it almost cold and not read too far ahead. It's just so that I can kind of go through that same discovery process that the listener does.
So what type of equipment do you need?
I have a little studio. You need a good microphone. You need a good room that is sound dampened. And I have a studio in the back there that used to be our master bathroom of all things. And I remodeled the house and now it's just kind of a utility room, but I put up the sound dampening there. And you can do it with a moderately, doesn't even have to be super powerful PC. There's a lot of really good software program. Now, my wife and I are both musicians, and we've had some music editing software, ways to record multi-tracks. And I've been using that for a long time. It's called Sonar now. It started out as Cakewalk, and they've had different iterations of it. And it's not made for audiobooks, but it works very well for it. But there are a lot of other programs that you can get. Some of them are free that you can get that will allow you to do that. There have been some changes in the last couple of years, in particular with Audible, in that there are some very technical things that your files that you submit have to adhere to and conform to. I've found a program that automatically does that. I mean, the peaks can't be too high, but the base level can't be too low. And there's just a lot of rules that you sort of have to follow in there. And that software's SoundForge has been very helpful in taking what I've recorded on the one and then running it through all their filters and, okay, we'll adjust it, now it fits.
So it's not that difficult to do?
No, it's not. You should probably buy a microphone that could run you anywhere from $150 or so to, I mean, you spend $1,000 or more on a really good professional grade microphone. Do a little work to your room and buy some padding, foam padding or whatever. And then if you have a PC, you want a mixing board with it. I mean, I bought a separate computer just for this, basically. So, and you spend $1,000 to $2,000, you could set up a pretty nice studio. It's a lot different than it used to be. I mean, it used to be so expensive to have good equipment to be able to do this. But the technology has changed so that you can really do anything in a home studio that you can do by going to a professional studio.
I've listened to some of Lauren's with you and your musical background. It really adds to it. I really like it.
Well, you have to thank my wife for that. She composes and performs all of those. I may add an instrument to it, but my wife Anita is the one who creates those. And part of what I do as a narrator is that for any series or any new book, she'll write something unique for them. And she's the musical brains behind all that.
Sounds like you married well.
I did. I outkicked my coverage, definitely. And she's standing over here about 5 feet from me, so blowing me kisses right now.
Is there any final hints or comments you can make before we close?
I think the best thing to do is you have to put in the time to learn how to do it properly. You can be a very good natural narrator and don't pay attention to some of the technical things. I lay down just a silent room track so that if I cut out things, cut out lip pops or whatever, it doesn't totally drop out. It sounds natural. So learn the production ways, learn how to master. And actually ACX has a lot of great resources for that, for learning how to do that. And then find your own style. I respect the work Scott Brick does greatly. I don't try to be him.
Right.
I think I've learned from him. And then don't worry when you get bad reviews. You're going to get them. No matter what. I remember the first project I did for Lauren, one of the reviews that came in was that he's way too upbeat for this material. It just was wrong or whatever. And curiously enough, he listened to the next two on it and gave me 5 stars on those. And I didn't change the way I was doing it. And so, you're going to catch people on bad days. You can't let that discourage you. You are going to get bad reviews periodically.
The energy you maintain, while is one of the things that I'm impressed with, I think is fantastic, because so many seem to die out before the book.
That's kind of how I am on the air anyway. That's my personality, I think, more than anything else. So that may have more to do with that.
Again, thank you so much. It's been delightful. And I really appreciate you coming on and helping me celebrate my 9th blogversary and my new blog site.
Oh, great. Well, congratulations. I wasn't even aware of that.
And also, you have a giveaway for us, which
Yes.
I really appreciate. And will you tell us about that?
Yeah, the giveaway is the audio version, Shadow of Murder. It's the latest one I've just done with Lauren. It just came out, about a month ago, I guess. And it's a free copy of that. There will be a promotional code that you can plug in, and the instructions are fairly simple. And if anybody has any trouble, they just contact me. I can show them how to do it. But it's a free copy of Shadow of Murder, which, by the way, is her longest project to date.
Oh, yes.
I think COVID, she got to writing, man, and with COVID, she just kept writing. But it's a great one. It's somewhat different than some of her. It's a Mac Faraday novel, and it's got a little different feel than some of them, and it's a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it.
Slightly on the paranormal side.
It has some paranormal aspects to it. Yeah, it definitely does, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to review the arc, and she asked me how she could cut it down, and there is no way. I mean, I looked and I thought it is long, but if she cut out anything, it would just ruin the whole book. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it is one of those things, and it took me less time to complete it than I thought, because I was getting into it too. It was a big project, but it's one we're excited about.
And you have both UK and US codes.
I do.
Right?